This is KFAB's Morning News. Welcome Joe Bishop-Henchman to the program. Joe is Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, and they've been doing some research into what will happen if the Congress doesn't extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Joe, good morning. Good to have you on.
Great to be with you.
So we in Nebraska would take a big hit, according to your research, right? Each taxpayer in Nebraska is going to get hit.
About $2,400 a year. And, I know it's a busy time in the news. Maybe people aren't focused on taxes, but when they passed the tax bill in 2017, they had most of it expire at the end of this year. And unless Congress acts to extend it or change it or do something, this tax increase will happen automatically starting January 1, 2026.
Is this independent of what's known as the Big Beautiful Bill, or is this part of it?
It's going to be part of it. That's the idea. But of course, with the margins in Congress and maybe being distracted by a whole bunch of other issues, it's not a sure thing that will happen. It's never really a sure bet to promise that Congress will do something. So it's really important that representatives hear from folks and say that it's important that this tax increase not happen, that they act, that they pass something.
Yeah. Business tax incentives would be a casualty, right?
Yep. We've got the small business tax credits, tax deductions that a lot of small businesses rely on. And then on the individual side, Nebraskans would face an average tax increase of about $2,400 a year. And then on top of that, Nebraska's state income tax follows a lot of the federal rules and definitions. So when taxes go up federally, they'll automatically go up for Nebraskans as well on the state forms.
Yeah.
So it really is bad in a lot of ways.
I know you've suggested, or the National Taxpayers Union has suggested that Nebraska should do something about that. We have only a few days left in this legislative session, and they're up to their ears in other issues. So I don't see that happening. But possibly next session, if this doesn't pass, or if this is not extended, what could the state do to help Nebraskans who are impacted by this tax increase?
Yeah, if it's December or January or later next year and Congress still hasn't acted, there are things that state policymakers can do. They can keep some of the pro-growth and pro-taxpayer provisions in the state tax code. And one of them, for example, is the standard deduction. That's the amount of tax-free income every taxpayer can earn. The federal law doubled it. That'll go away January 1 if Congress doesn't act. But Nebraska could choose to keep that for the state return, so that doesn't go away.
Right. So for families, Joe, and for individuals, we'd basically go back to the tax brackets, if you will, that were in place before 2017, right?
Yeah, and we don't want that to happen. Another big one is allowing small businesses to deduct the full amount of what they invest each year rather than having to deduct it over a number of years. That's something that state policymakers could do separately from Washington and make sure that pro-growth feature stays in the tax code.
All right.
Then, I just heard on the news update about the SALT deduction for state and local taxes. That's one we're keeping an eye on because most of the benefit of that is going to go to New York and California and New Jersey. In fact, Nebraska would only see 0.1% of all of the tax cuts if that cap is raised.
Yeah. What's your bet on what Congress will do here?
I think they'll get it done. Nothing like a deadline, and this January 1 flashing date is a pretty good deadline, but it's certainly not a sure thing. And people, and they need to learn this should be the priority and not maybe some other things that Congress is focused on.
Very good. Joe, thanks. Appreciate the time this morning. Have a wonderful weekend. Joe Bishop-Henchman from the National Taxpayers Union Foundation.